Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Happy Sunday. Excited to be here as part of the Chicanx Caucus this morning with our special guest, Mzuri Pambeli. And just a little bit about La Razonida Party and the Chicana Caucus. We're excited to be having these segments every month, once a month, that are open to the public, to followers and supporters, anyone who's interested in La Razonida Party. We do have our study groups every Wednesday. And you can sign up for that at razonidaparty.org if you have not signed up yet. But our monthly meetings is really to bring attention to issues in our community, also affecting, Chicana, Chicanx, and other mujeres in the struggle, and to not just, look inward with each other and ourselves, but also to support our sisters, brothers, siblings, in other communities, and also in the struggle as well. And so to really look at how we can organize together and support one another and learn from one another. So we're really, really excited today to have Mzuri Pambeli, who is whose lifelong objective is unity in Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa and her peoples under scientific socialism. Mzuri Pambeli has a BA in economics from UC Berkeley, an MAOM in organizational management, and she's a certified self-insurance and risk management specialist. She is also a Central Committee member, a coordinator of Central Program Committee, Central Worldwide Coordinator of the All African Women Revolutionary Union, international and local organizer, keynote lecturer, community, Pan-Africanist, women's advocate, member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party since 1976. She's a worldwide student, youth, women issue speaker on campuses and communities. She's a speaker and coordinator of programs in California, the Midwest, Canada, the United States Virgin Islands, England, and West Africa. She's a founding member of the West African Music and Dance Ensemble from 1974 to 1979. At the under University of California, Berkeley, under musical director, Professor C.K. Ledespo. She's coordinating events and lectures for keynotes of the AAPRP to include Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, and Mukasa Willie Ricks, former members of SNCC/BPP. Mzuri Pambeli has been organizing lifelong and has continued to uplift women's issues, especially within the All African Women's Union, Revolutionary Union. We're excited to have her today to not only just impart, some of her historical knowledge and wisdom upon us, but to also celebrate her and work with her in the struggle. Thank you so much, Mzuri, for coming through and, joining us this morning, giving us your time. And we're really excited to have you.
Muchas gracias, everyone. Greetings.
Yes.
Bon dia.
I know, we've met, in person before, but you've definitely been working with La Razonida Party and, our primo here, Ernesto Ayala, and, the Ayala family for a very, very long time. And so we know you have a long history with La Razonida Party as well. And so I just wanted to invite you today to, kind of kick us off with, telling us, a little bit about your history with the All African People's Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union.
Greetings. I was just going to text, please don't read the entire bio. But I'm definitely appreciative for being invited. I as you can see, 1976 is a long time ago. So I grew up in this movement. I joined the AAPRP. I was a junior in college, and so I grew up in this party and in this movement. And so that means that it really formed the basis of who I am as an adult, or who I became. And when you grow up in the movement, and the people that helped build the party were former members. SNCC stands for Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or Student National Coordinating Committee. These were the youth that were in the South during the Civil Rights Movement. And Mukasa and Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, just some of the members. Some of our other former initial Central Committee were also in CORE and NAACP. And then as the movement, evolved from civil rights, influenced by Malcolm X and the movement, and they decided that they wanted to call for Black power, that they wanted more than just civil rights, that we wanted power in all its definition. The evolution of that movement brought folks to begin to travel. Some formed the Black Panther Party. Some of the members of our Central Committee were first members of the Black Panther Party, and then traveling to Vietnam and seeing the revolutions there, traveling to Cuba, traveling to Africa, and meeting Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. They began to see, and Nkrumah helped them understand as president of Ghana in West Africa, and then moving to Guinea after the coup in February 1966, initiated by the CIA. That the core of the Black Revolution is in Africa. And so the blueprint that he had written out, Dr. Nkrumah had written out, was how to develop unity and how to coordinate ourselves in the same way that the Europeans are coordinated collectively all over the world. They have NATO, they created the UN primarily for themselves. And it wasn't until independence movements began to define themselves and join the UN. But the intent was that the UN would be for European imperialists, just as NATO is for primarily European imperialists. And so in the same way, the movement for African people began to shape and define itself. And all of those influences, it led to so many things. So when we talk about the movement for the African Revolution, we have to mention the role that the Cuban people played in the African Revolution. The fact that after the independence of Cuba, our dear ancestor Ernesto Che Guevara traveled throughout Africa, went to Algeria to meet with the comrades in Algeria and talk about how to support the liberation struggle there. Went to Ghana and spent time with President Nkrumah, and they began to talk about apartheid South Africa, what was still happening in the Congo, and the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, and all of those things that were going on in Southern Africa. And at that time, Che felt the need to somehow assist. And so they came back when he left, they came back and spoke to the Central Committee of Cuba and began to orchestrate a plan to go back to Southern Africa and teach comrades how to fight in battle. Similar the way they had done in the Sierra Maestros and in the various regions of Cuba. And so there was a final victory after years of training and moving further into Southern Africa, where there was a victory that helped overturn apartheid in Southern Africa. It helped the liberation movement in Namibia, as well as in the Congo. And people bled and died for the African Revolution. And there are Africans in Cuba that are also African by blood and by ancestry. So the concept of unity, as we grow up in the revolution and we see this merging, there is no colonial line that divides us when it comes to revolution. There is no border that you can create that separates the struggle of people, indigenous people who are fighting against colonization, imperialism, and fighting for liberation. And so my growing up in the AAPRP and beginning to meet leaders of the American Indian movement, leaders of Chicano Moratorium, leaders in La Raza Unida, that was just a part of what the struggle is. And I saw, no, you grow up and the foundation of our party is ideological training. We have a book list. We've always had a book list, and this came from the Panther Party. Some aspects of it was from SNCC, but you couldn't just walk into the party with a blank slate. You had to study and study all our lives, constantly study, because we know that our people, even if you dig in the pyramids, that's 20,000, 30,000 years of history. Human history is long, and we've been only here for a short period of time. There's a lot to study about who we are as a people, as a culture on this planet. And so we study constantly. I have never not been in a study group since 1976, even when I recruit young people and I join their group and I study with them and I start all over. There is no time that I don't read the same book and get something different out of it with new people. So I am constantly studying. So as this being the foundation, I also study Cuba, I study Chile, I study Nicaragua, and I've been around long enough to have been around to see those territories get liberation, attempts to overthrow them, and them to redefine themselves today. And so, what I can say is that life, and as we define unity, we all have our different components, our different histories, our different beliefs, but the unity is in the fact that we are humanity fighting for the same thing. And so the unity is that the closer we get, the more we can collaborate and at one time coordinate strategies and tactics of the revolution to attain victory. And we have examples, clear examples, how those kinds of liberation strategies have actually won victory. And I mean victory in terms of liberated territory. So it is clear we are scientific socialists. And so we believe in science. Revolution is science. So that really defines my life. I don't know anything else. I was 19. I'm 67, excuse me. I don't want to get older than I already am. And I feel pretty old, but, I'm 67 and I don't know anything else. I don't know any other life. And I see the world from that lens, and it is just as natural as nature itself. Unity.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And to that also, I know with your long history, you're legendary. You've created so much support, so much unity, so much cross collaboration in terms of this fight and the liberation of all of our people, right? And with that, I know you have made huge strides as it relates to women and making history with women. And, we had a brief conversation earlier this week, and I was just blown away with everything that you were telling me in terms of, how, you've supported, or you've created this support, in a sense, for women to support one another and to uplift one another. And you shared with me the lobbying of each other. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and your efforts with the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, and what that's looking at like right now, and overall, and how that's kind of over working into the All African People's Revolutionary Party?
Yes, let me first state that I don't know if I'm legendary. I don't believe I'm legendary. When you grow up and you see Beyonce and Kanye and blah blah blah, I don't know if and don't nobody know me on the East Side. I can walk down the street and don't. Thank goodness nobody knows me. But I can say that that I have been consistent all my life, even from my youth to today. I've been consistent as an organizer, both in my organization and in my community, both as a pregnant mother giving birth and then breastfeeding at African Liberation Day, never taking, that much of a break, even, to, my son might say, the detriment, well, not really detriment, but not giving full attention. Children want to think that they should get 100% of your attention, but he grew up from his very beginnings in meetings, in the work study meetings, in the committee meetings, at events, even as we developed relationship with El Partido de la Raza Unida. I remember when Ernesto and Libertad were 9 and 11, something like that. And I was going up to speak, and, my son might have been 4 or something. And I just tell them, can you take him away so that I can concentrate, on the presentation? And I still remember Libertad thinking that she could actually pick him up. And just wanting to be the big sister, and so in that sense, family and relationships and integrating our struggle has always been natural for me, and for those of us that are in the struggle. And the sisterhood that we develop, I didn't have sisters, but in the African village, I always did. In my community, the girls on my street. And I grew up on 118th in Willowbrook. The next city is Watts, a couple blocks away. I grew up in a community where there were no defining lines as to, who was who supports who helps who. We all played together, we fought together, we shared together, and so for us, and not having any biological sisters, sisterhood meant a lot to me. And I was thinking about it last night, and I need to add a chapter in my book that I'm working on to sisterhood, because my cousin was always my sister. She's 6 months ahead, and she's the only girl, and she has 2 brothers, and I was the only girl, and I had 2 brothers. And so we had each other. And then when I went to college, there were the sisters that we were all in the African Music and Dance Ensemble. We developed a sisterhood there. I was in the percussionist unit, they were dancers, and as more sisters joined, we all joined the All African People's Revolutionary Party at the same time. Because when you start to really know culture, and I don't want to get into it too much because it's probably weird, or different, but when you grow up only knowing English and only knowing the culture of America, which is predominantly European, except for your own culture as Indigenous people, African people, Indigenous people, etc. When you begin to speak in another African language and sing in another African language and do traditional dances and drumming around puberty, around wedding ceremonies, around rituals, around war, in the Ewe language, which our professor was Ewe from Ghana, it transforms you. And you begin to realize another part of yourself that you didn't know, but you understand why is it that I can even sing this song and speak these languages so easy? Why can I do this dance so easy? And not realizing we've been doing African dance all along, and our broken languages, the way we transform the English language and our slangs is a form of like Creole or creating languages. And you'll see this in Haiti, you'll see this in Cuba, everywhere we are, you'll see us creating a fusion of African language and the colonial language that we're speaking. And so the sisterhood that came out of the dance ensemble, that came out of the AAPRP, we formed a unity there, and we became the nucleus and the foundation in the Bay Area for the AAPRP, and it exploded. We grew, and we grew because sisterhood creates, womanhood, whether, other genders can agree or not, we can create the mat that brings the community together, where everyone can sit around. We not only create the mat, but then we bring the food, and we bring the drink, and we bring the babies, and we bring the music, and create the ambiance for people to want to come together. And that's what the sisters did. That's what we did in 19 and 20 and 21. And so that sisterhood, even in its embryonic stage, there was resistance to it. As leaders, and we didn't see ourselves as leaders, we are doers. But in that sense, we saw the resistance, we saw the egos, we saw the struggle, and we either had to band together or we would lose what we had gained. And so even that struggle, the dynamic of that struggle taught us lessons about our own power and the importance of unity. And so it was that experience that gave rise, and also the political history of every real revolutionary party in the world that had not only a party, but developed a women's union, a women's unit, and even those who began to struggle and organize and evolve into guerrilla warfare, they had a women's contingent, because women felt that they had to fight for their land, whether it be in Cuba, whether it be in Vietnam, whether it be in, Nicaragua, Venezuela, various parts of Africa, and probably in more than any other continent, the African continent had women's contingents that fought in the war, gun in hand, to fight for territory and land. And that kind of fight also transforms you, being in guerrilla warfare. And being in political struggle also is a form of guerrilla warfare. Sometimes we think our brothers are our brothers, but sometimes because of power and the taste of power, and I guess the attraction of power, we lose the sense of the oneness and what we're really fighting for. And so it seems like we are fighting against each other, and when we should be fighting together. And so those things and those experiences hone and develop us. Some of us don't survive. And as a point of a reality that I experienced in the struggle, more women will drop out than men. Because biologically, we are having babies, we are taking care of the family, and we call it triple oppression. We exist in this struggle as Latino or African people, as workers, and as women. So we have a form of triple oppression that others do not have, that are that are European, that come from the colonial race, because they have the privilege, whereas everyone else is not privileged. And so we have to fight as African or Latino, we have to fight as workers, and we have to fight as women. And so for us in that triple oppression, we had to begin to really study and evolve. And that's where the Women's Union became critical. We had to understand, why is it that we have these various struggles? Why is it that patriarchy and even our before capitalism and feudalism, why were our cultures still favoring men versus women? And we talked about that even this past week as we were strategizing about what we were going to do. How do we transform our culture? Because even in African culture, and I tapped in with a couple of my sisters that are in Ghana and in South Africa that are Zulu, Xhosa, Akan in West Africa. And they said, our culture is both matrilineal and patrilineal, but when it comes to who is going to lead the group, who is going to lead the army, who's going to lead the government, even women could make a decision to choose, but they must always choose a man. And we're talking about traditional cultures that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. And this is a chit chat just a couple of days ago. Wow. So what we understand and what is most vital inside of the party that was launched in 1990 at the 10th anniversary of the Women's Union was we called for the social revolution. And the social revolution meant that we needed as a people to examine our culture, our relationships as human beings to each other, our gender inequities, our inequities and disrespect as youth to elder and elder to youth. Well, there are so many complexities that have transformed us through colonialism and prior to colonialism. And so it's through those discussions and struggles and studies that we've had since 1990 and going forward, where we have become clearer and clearer and clearer as to what we are fighting against and what we are fighting for. We are fighting for unity, no doubt. We are fighting for liberation, no doubt, but we're also fighting for balance. Balance within our culture. And so what we experience is that those of us who understand that must lobby with each other so that we can make certain gains and then be able to further break it down with those who do not understand. Some of those who do not understand are some of our sisters. Just as an example about how even today these traditions impact us, we can talk about in various parts of Africa, there's still the bride price, meaning that young girls are matched with men for marriage. And so they're actually what they call arranged marriages. And so in arranged marriage, they could be 12, they could be 16. It's rare that they're older than 18 because you want them young, and some just started their cycles, etc., whatever. But these realities still exist. But what happens is that when they're wed, after the wedding, there's a woman that prepares the bed before the wedding. And then that woman, and in most instances, she's paid for these duties. Her job is to go after the first night of the wedding and check the bed for blood. If there is no blood, then the deal that she was a virgin is nulled somehow. And whatever, I'm not sure what happens, if the man wants his money back because she's not a virgin, whatever. But these are real realities in Africa and maybe in other parts of the world where we are still, we're still monetized by our virginity and by our ability to have children. After the war in Mozambique and Angola, the women talked about after war, men saw ourselves different. Even our husbands saw us different. And some wanted a divorce because we had actually fought and we were different. And so these realities require that even those women who play that role in terms of checking the bed, they are uplifting and supporting patriarchy.
Right.
So we have to bind with each other as we politically understand. And, there's such a thing, we talk about allies. Well, even for our brothers that are allies that understand and ideologically, we lobby with them because
Mhm.
they need to go inside of the unit of men and begin to talk and break down and set the example and help to transform the culture just as women. So it's in these various ways that we begin to work and identify and struggle to transform both the circle of women and the circle of men, and even the non-binary that we are beginning to talk about today. Is that the reality is that we are fighting for liberation in total.
Mhm.
Whether we understand nature and the evolution of gender, et cetera, we're struggling for life, for
Yes.
all life.
Yes. Thank you. With that, how do you maybe can give us some strategies in terms of being better in being in unity with one another, right? So here we're at the Chicana Caucus, there's the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. How can we be better at co-collaborating or lobbying each other maybe within, our organizations? What are some things that maybe you've done in the past or ideas maybe that you all have, spoken about now that there are a lot more, women leaders in the All African People's Revolutionary Party from, our conversation this week. What are some things that maybe we can do moving forward?
Well, in our party, we have various campaigns. So we've had them from the very beginning. One of the campaigns is Smash the FBI, CIA. And 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 so what that does, that campaign really gives us a basis to connect with other organizations that have the same leaning politically, where we want to do programs to talk about the role that the FBI and CIA played in say destroying the Black Panther Party, destroying the Puerto Rican Liberation Movement, destroying the American Indian movement and other movements. And so we do programs and we collaborate to do programs around that. We do programs around for instance, Black and Brown unity, or the role of religion in revolution. So you get people from the spiritual community and we come together and we collaborate and have discussions about what is the common link between religion and revolution. And there we form this bond because our analysis begins to get tighter and tighter as a people, even though we may come from different political, religious, and spiritual beliefs. For women, it starts, and again, every organization is not going to have the kind of regimen of political education that we have in the AAPRP. And I'm not sure if La Raza Unida has that same, but we meet once every 2 weeks,
Yes, we meet weekly.
always. And Ernesto will tell you, we meet this has always been a part of our structure. Our circles meet once every 2 weeks. We may move it around, but that's the calendar we have always had.
Mhm.
And so study is critical for us. That's our foundation. For those who don't study, it's a little bit more difficult, but we try to find out what is it that we have in common. What are we fighting for? So our coordinator prior to me, and just as a correction, I had stepped down from the Central Committee and coordinating the AAWRU a couple years ago, about 2 years ago. Because it was the end of my term. We served 5-year terms each. So I had been 5 years on program committee as coordinator and then 5 years as the union coordinator, for others to step up, because I had created a small council of young women. They weren't elected, but I asked them to assist me because I was the only union coordinator worldwide. And those young sisters are now a part of the leadership. because they got the experience over those last 5 years to organize and connect. So one of the consistencies that I've been doing in Southern California is Pan-African Women's Day. Pan-African Women's Day has been, if you know anything about the AAPRP, African Liberation Day has been a program that we've been a part of in the US since 1974, I believe. And you can go online and see some of the first African Liberation Days where Elaine Brown was head of the Black Panther Party, and they were in DC. And we had Queen Mother Moore, and you had all these people from the movement, but the only two women that you really saw was Elaine Brown of, Auntie Elaine, and Queen Mother Moore, who was in UNIA and all these other movements, et cetera. She helped train Malcolm X and, all of this. So it's always been that imbalance, but what programs like that have allowed us to do is to have various other alliances come and speak. So once a year for ALD, we always have La Raza Unida speak. We always have the Cuban representative speak. We always have the Palestinians speak. We always have, of course, the Africans to come and speak. Haiti, has they're still struggling for liberation. And so those are opportunities where we always connect. And Pan-African Women's Day, I treat it in the same way, but it's for women. And at one point, I even, me and another younger sister in the organization, we created a 2-day event so that it was particularly geared toward younger sisters, but older sisters got into it because there's a big open mic community in Southern California. So we had a 2-day event. Sister Speaks was day 1, and then the Pan-African Forum's day 2. And Sister Speaks because I started going into the open mics and I would just see brothers. And this was early in the 2000s. But I said, you know what? I want a day where it's just sisters. And I mean, only they are to be on the mic. And whether they're poets or not, we just want to hear what they have to say. And so we created this tradition where we brought, we had a safe place for sisters to come, and brothers are always invited, but we have this place where we can talk about our issues. We can do it artistically on Sister Speaks Night, and then we can bring sisters throughout the community. And we've always brought everyone from all of the communities to come and speak. And then we had a forum where we talked about patriarchy, we talked about colonialism, we talked about liberation, we uplifted, Mama Winnie Mandela when she passed away, and other leaders. We brought in Ramona Africa twice, who is in the MOVE organization. And if you know anything about MOVE and the bombing of Philadelphia and the MOVE headquarters, we brought Mama Ramona twice to LA. And so we create these traditions where we're constantly connecting with each other. And so those are ways we do it. We do programs throughout the year. We should do more programs throughout the year and collaborate. And last year, I got a message, the ancestors are constantly speaking to me. And so our coordinator, she had a close relationship. And so we had a close relationship with the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania in South Africa. And so after the 40th anniversary that we had in a couple years ago for the Women's Union, last year, it just came to me that I wanted to do a campaign just along the theme of African women must lead. And so I asked a couple sisters in my organization and a couple sisters from PAC, and we began doing a program on Facebook Live and going into, YouTube, where we talked about different themes of what is it, why should we be leaders? Why should we lead? How are we leading? Why are we not leading? where can we lead, whatever. And we did this all last year. And the remarkable aspect of that is that at the end of this past year, those two sisters are now on the leadership bodies of PAC in one of the provinces in Azania, Southern Africa. And one of the sisters that was on the group in my organization, she is now back on the Central Committee in the AAPRP. This wasn't our objective, but what happens is theory and practice, when it continues to evolve, like in science, is transformative. So it not only transforms the person, but it also transforms the milieu. So I hope that wasn't long-winded. I hope
No.
it didn't sound crazy, but that's kind of, how things have developed. But theory and practice is constant. And Nkrumah's, has this famous quote, thought without practice is empty. In other words, you can study all day long and you have people who are always on YouTube and reading books, but they're never practicing. That's empty. What are you studying for? Your ego or what? What are you studying for? Practice without thought, without the theory, is blind. People who don't study, who don't understand theory, who haven't studied history, but they're doing, the mistakes that can be made can be very dangerous. So you have to have both. You have to have study and you have to have practice, and it should be constant.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I do want to, allow some time for questions, but I wanted to ask you, is there any last, thoughts or, things that maybe we didn't touch on that you wanted to share with us today?
I made a couple of notes. One of the things that I always ask youth and women, who are your heroes? Who are your sheroes? That's, I think, what we have to constantly ask ourselves. And, for me, one of the things that I continue to read right now, I'm reading this book that I got, and I believe in studying. This is Women in the Cuba, The Making of a Revolution Within a Revolution by Velma Espin, Acela de los Santos, and Yolanda Ferreira. And so these are the women from Santiago de Cuba, a part of the rebel army, that talks about the birth of the Federation of Cuban Women. There's so much to learn from a real people's socialist revolutionary movement and party. And so, those are some of my heroes, just like the women of Eritrea. We met with them, one of the representatives, and they've since independence, and they're fighting for their liberation and their victory. They have actually, one of the things they've done in their constitution is they've outlawed bride price. What I mentioned in terms of arranged marriage, they've outlawed that. Certain things that even though within the culture, it's deeply, deeply rooted in East Africa, like it is in other parts of Africa, but the women are unified. The women fought for revolution. They fought for liberation. Their women's union has been a part of the contingent from the very beginning. They fought for those things. So they have the right and they have the power to change the Constitution and the state. And so those are, I ask people, think about who your sheroes are, who your heroes are, and study them. One of the things that I want to also convey is no real revolution occurs without the people. And so this isn't white feminism. Let me get that clear. And we have to understand the difference it's okay to be a feminist, but we have to be nationalists. And
Mhm.
European feminism has always really been to uphold capitalism for the most part. Not to say that the socialists and when you talk about the revolutionaries and the initial communist revolution in Russia were to destroy capitalism, but this bourgeois European feminism is really just to take the place of the white man. The white woman is just taking the place of the white man, still upholding capitalism and imperialism, you know? And so
Right.
we have to understand that we are fighting for all the people. We're fighting to uplift ourselves who have been downtrodden and pushed to the bottom because we've been colonized by a European culture that is highly patriarchal and very violent and has no respect for humanity. We want to ensure that we refine our culture. Study your culture. Study those elements within your culture, because we're dialectical materialists. Everything in nature is dialectical. So there is good part of our culture and there is bad. Study your culture, because this is where the lessons of who we really are can come forward. And it allows us to also look towards transforming ourselves as individuals and as a collective. We have to constantly transform. Everything in nature transforms. So we have to be a part of that. The other thing, and I know, because I talked, Ernesto and I talk when we get together a lot, is this struggle is about the landless, the homeless, the workers, and those who do not have work. Because the reality is we work so many hours in this colony for nothing, while the rich keep getting richer. So this is really about the destroying of the bourgeois and the petty bourgeois class for the workers.
Yeah.
And so we need to be with the workers, the non-workers, the landless, the homeless. We need to find a way to connect with them, because they too need to be a part of the revolution.
That's
So we
right.
cannot leave them out. There are some that are not literate, that don't, even in our movement, that are ashamed to say, I don't understand this, I can't read. And that's why we read and discuss collectively as a unit, because everyone comes with different levels of literacy. And so we want to make sure that we're not, because we have our degrees and and sometimes we find ourselves, and I had this discussion just a few days ago with the sisters, we cannot sound like the petty bourgeois because we have all these degrees. We start speaking in a language that our people cannot understand. We have to transform our language so
Right.
that it relates to the people. It relates on the level of the people, so that we fight for all, like you says, comrade Peggy, Aida, all power to the people. Absolutely. So these are just some of the few things. I have a couple other things, but I think those were the predominant things, because our struggle is either going to be for the bourgeois, and it's not going to reach the people, and we're going to be speaking in a language, and we've been talking about this for decades, but for whatever reason we cannot change. And I think it's because our leadership still does not represent the broad class of the masses, and that's why we are struggling to really, for our movement, make sure that Africa becomes primary. We want to make sure that our sisters on the African continent is in our leadership, because they are the ones that are really suffering the most. They're the ones that are not benefiting from living in the metropoles. And so, like the sisters in South Africa said, there's serious load shedding, so energy goes off. If you go any part of the inland territories, whether it's in the villages, the countryside of any territory, power goes out sometimes for hours. And why is that? Because they suck all of the resources for the bourgeois, for the petty bourgeois, so that they get electricity, they get water, they running water, they get all of these benefits. But in the countryside and in the villages, et cetera, they do not. So these are who we're fighting for, because they are the real ones that are been toiling and struggling and sacrificing to bring everything that's on our table.
That's right.
You know.
Thank
So
you.
just some of the things, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and open it for comments. I see Peggy has her hand up. Go ahead, hermana.
Hello.
Greetings.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being and speaking. You're just saying so many powerful words. I'm just like, wow, it's such an honor, much respect. But you touched on something, and what you said about that, a lot of us are very, highly educated, and a lot of times we lose people, the masses. In order for us to get the masses to understand and build that rapport and trust, talk to them, in a way they can understand us, because there's a lot of people that would love to join the Abrazo Unida Party, but I know that some of them are like, I'm not that smart, or I don't, and like, no, you will learn. And I encourage them, because I've been learning too. So, also us encouraging our people, encouraging, even us empowering our women, because, I may not have a, PhD, I have my bachelor's, but, some of us, like, I don't know, I'm not going to know what they're talking about. But the more we help each other out and empower each other, it's beautiful. And thank you so much for touching on the masses.
Yes. And I even believe in one of the points that I was saying in terms of our sisters from the villages being a part of the leadership, is that at some point we really need to have them write the propaganda so that it speaks in the language of the people. We need to have the young people, the workers, those who may not be college educated, but they're in the unions, they're in the workers' unions. Let us take this document and how would you say it? Put it in the language that you would say, that can break down to the people so that they understand it. I mean, that's honestly, because we've said this for decades, and I swear, we cannot break it down. We cannot keep, Bob used to talk about, Bob Marley, he used to talk about isms and schisms. We can't stop putting those isms in it. It's like we can't speak anything else. And so it's not until it becomes a real revolution when the people are actually writing the propaganda and are writing the notes for us to speak, or putting them on the mic. It's like an interpreter. You speak, now can you have the people translate, the workers translate into the people's language? That's where we have to make sure that the people of various levels of classes are in leadership. They are helping with strategies and tactics for recruitment. And that's why going to the open mics, there are people of various different levels there in those open mics. There were. And so it's like, I want to go there. I want to be where the people are. And I want to also kind of reflect, that as a woman, this is how I'm feeling. I can speak my joy, my happiness, my disappointment, whatever my song is, I can sing it there. I think the same thing is that we need to go where the people are and look for those people that are not the petty bourgeois, that are the struggling workers, and work with them, develop them, because they need to be in the leadership. We are not going to recruit the masses without mass representation in our leadership.
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. Jen in the chat says, thank you for sharing your wisdom. My takeaways are continued decolonization, the Sister Speaks initiative, and emphasizing the collective. And then S. Rangel says, you've dropped so many gems.
I say that, again, there's so much, and the other thing that we do is in our party, and you may, like what you're doing here, women, men, other genders, seminars, ideological political seminars, where you talk to each other, where you have a reading material as your foundation, and then you have these discussions around that issue. Having political education seminars are vital. That's what we did. That's how we came up. That's what we're doing for our new members. And we have a cross-fertilization of all of us, you know, from those who've been in 40 years to those who've been in 4 months. And we're all talking about the same thing. These seminars are very, very vital and critical for mass collective consciousness, because we don't want class consciousness. We want mass consciousness. So yeah, keep these going for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know we're, you know, out of time, but if, you know, if anybody else has any other comments or would like to unmute, can go ahead and do that. But I do want to thank you so much, Mzuri, for coming and speaking with us, and not just being here today, but for all of your continued partnership, collaboration, support, love, knowledge sharing with El Partido for, you know, the countless years that you've been involved with us. And, you know, this is how I met you, right? Like I was able to meet you through the Partido. So I'm very grateful that, you know, El Partido is bringing us together. And I really do believe that this is, you know, there's a lot to come. And you know, my wheels were spinning as you were talking, and I was getting some ideas, and I'm like, oh, I think, you know, this is going to just become a stronger partnership and collaboration.
No
and there's a
doubt.
lot more, you know, to come with us, because, you know, as women of color, and all the struggles that we endure, we definitely are stronger together. And I think it's that time, you know, where a lot more, you know, youth are getting involved, a lot more community members are getting involved, and this is our time to rise. And so I think rising together is the only way, you know, and so I'm really excited about, you know, what will come from, you know, our collaboration and unity efforts for the people and to liberate our communities, and not just here, you know, but abroad. So thank you so much for coming. And again, if anybody wants to unmute on your way out, feel free to unmute.
And also I have a group of young people that we have in our circle, and Ernesto has said, yes, we'll you know, we can do programs together and stuff. And so I'm hoping I can get them in the room so that you all can be, you know, continue to work and collaborate together, because this is really a next generation thing. It's the reason why, you know, I stepped down. It's time for others to step into leadership. I'm always here. And Ernesto and Libertad will tell you, we're family. It's beyond the movement. When you know them, when I know them as children and they're adults with their own kids, you know, they can only be my nephew and niece, you know. And so we're family, and I have family like that in various organizations where we worked for decades together. So this bond is beyond the movement. It is a part of the people's revolution. And so I'm always here for whatever you need, just like I am for them. It's because you know, I didn't see Wakanda, whatever happened the last time, but I could tell from the graphics where it was going. And I could tell that the imperialists and their propaganda machine, Disney, was going to talk about the division of indigenous people and African people, to split them apart, because the potential power of our unity will mean the collapse of this colony, the settler colony. So let's fire them up. Let's get organized, y'all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, forward ever, backwards never. Anybody got anything else?
All right, gracias. Thank you, everyone. Que viva la raza.
Que viva.
Que viva. We've been listening in. My dad, my mom,
la
and myself.
Black Power.
Yes. Power to the people.
Yes.
All power to the people.
All power to the
All
people.
power to the people.
Thank you so much.
Love you, Tia.
La imagen